From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Few things are as uplifting as the greatest moments in sports. And nothing brings us together quite like Team USA at the Olympic Winter Games. From NBC Universal's iconic storytelling to the innovative technology across Xfinity and Peacock, Comcast brings the Olympic Games home to America, sharing every moment with millions. When Team USA steps onto the world stage, we're not just watching, we're cheering together. This winter, we're all on the same team. Comcast, proud partner of Team USA.
United Health Group is simplifying healthcare by investing in tools to help patients know more and pay less. These tools help patients find providers and compare costs and save hundreds of dollars annually. Learn more at unitedhealthgroup.com/commitment.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Ayisha Jaffer. March is Women's History Month, a time to recognize women's leadership in our communities. Shale is one of those leaders in Louisville. She's a first-generation refugee and the executive director of More Than a Smile Foundation, a nonprofit supporting immigrant and refugee families through mentorship, community support, and women's empowerment programming. The organization's name hearkens to Shale's belief that a smile should never be a mask for struggle, but a symbol of strength, hope, and belonging. I spoke with Shale about her work and why centering women matters. More Than a Smile began in your family's grocery store. Can you bring me back to that moment and tell me more?
So More Than a Smile honestly was an idea I had going through JCPS and just being a child of immigrants. I was in the AP program. My parents were not aware. They didn't know their child was excelling in school. So for me, when I reached my junior year and I wanted to graduate early because I had all my credits and I was doing very well. So for me, it just didn't make sense to do senior year with no classes left. I opted and asked my counselor, hey, I want to graduate early. What do I need to do? Remembering that day where she was like, you're actually not in AP. We just, shuffled you in and you took the classes, but there was a paper that your parents needed to sign. And, my counselor gave me the choice or option to, graduate that year early without my AP credentials, or I could spend my senior year obtaining updated documents and to be, added onto the AP course list, or I guess certified AP paperwork and get that sticker on my diploma. And me being me, I was like, I'm already done. I would much rather than just graduate. So I graduated, but that still was in my head. I was still thinking, like, where did I go wrong? Like, what did I do? And from that experience, I wanted a way to give back to the community. I had the idea and I was like, well, why don't I open a grocery store? We don't have many foods that we remember from back home that we're able to have here. So my family, helped me with getting a grocery store. It was Amina's Food Market, and it was in West Louisville. And the grocery store idea honestly sparked, my interest in helping the youth that were living with us in West Louisville. And for me, I used the grocery store as a way to say, okay, I couldn't, get myself to understand where I went wrong. How can I help other kids who may be the next Amina, who, are in school right now in JCPS and they're not being looked after until they get to that stage of graduation. So I started tutoring kids. It just started with 2 to 3 kids. It grew. As the number grew, I, became overwhelmed. And then after COVID, I decided to close the store because I felt like there was a next step. Where do we go next? And More Than a Smile basically began incorporating. I was in my last stage of getting my first master's degree. And when COVID hit, we closed the store. I went back to school because I didn't know, what was next, how to do a nonprofit, what a nonprofit was, the processes. So I went back to school to learn how do we bring More Than a Smile to life. And with that journey also came not really a blueprint or a book or something that you could, look at to see and learn what exactly it takes, to have a nonprofit. And our nonprofit board members were all women who I asked, hey, we've all experienced one thing or another in our different fields. So that's honestly where the process or idea of More Than a Smile came to life.
Were you tutoring the kids out of the grocery store?
Yes, we were using the back of the store, but also some kids preferred. We didn't have tables or chairs, so we actually used the shelves. I mean, right now that I think about it, I'm like, what was I doing? But honestly, I feel like that is what pushed a lot of kids, because they not only were in an environment where they felt like they belonged, but also just having a sense of resilience. Like, I'm at a grocery store doing homework. It's not every day that a lot of people can say they do their homework in a grocery store.
Just going back to that time, what gaps were you seeing in immigrant and refugee families that kind of sparked this, aside from the need for tutoring and education?
My first experience of realizing that there are gaps was my mother actually getting a C-section, and she had no idea what prompted this or that she was even getting a C-section. So for me, being a kid who, she depended on as her interpreter, and I'm not able to explain these are the procedures that were done to you, because I'm like, they just took you and you were gone. So I don't know what happened.
And how old were you?
I was about 6 at the time, turning 7. So it was a time where I didn't really understand medical terminology. But if you know 5 words, then my parents just honestly thought, those 5 words are going to get us at least some understanding if we can get one word in. We moved to Kentucky because we were resettled in Dallas, Texas. And now in Kentucky is when I started to, now be in other offices and not just, the medical checkups. I was now at the food stamp office helping with paperwork. I was at job interviews. I remember specifically one interview I was with my mom. It was at a local hotel. This was after 10 years of her having experience, and the paper noted, if you have experience, your pay is different. And she's never had a pay difference in her life. She's always known that if I'm a housekeeper, this is the amount that I get. I was a junior in high school. I was her interpreter in the interview room. And at the time, I was just thinking about all of the times that she, was told no. Like, she didn't have an advocate in the room, and that's why she was getting the low minimum wage pay rate. But this specific experience, she was just talking and smiling, and I was like so intrigued, because it's like, even with the barriers that she has, she's still willing to smile, and she's still willing to say, these are the qualities and skills that I have. And this was the first time, and I believe that her pay rate was $16. That was the highest pay rate she's ever had. So for her, it just felt like I'm being seen, and, I don't have to limit myself and say, you can just give me whatever's available. I'm now able to advocate and say, oh, well, I have 10 years of experience, and these are, my qualities and skills that I have and I bring to the table. And honestly, I was just thinking about all of the other times where she didn't get that.
So the gaps you're seeing is basically knowledge, it sounds like, and the ability to advocate.
Yes.
And have you seen that kind of evolve?
Honestly, just experimenting as the person that I am. I have worked at several places where I just used it as an experience. And one of those places, I have spoken to a lot of people where they've worked there for over 10 years. They've done every job that you could possibly imagine within that space, but they were never given the opportunity to get a supervisor role or management role because of the fact that their English wasn't perfect, or they did not fit the typical ideal. And honestly, with that experience, I've learned that even with me having 2 master's degrees, I was also in that same boat, because I tested and I applied to the same roles that they were applying to. So I knew that it wasn't because they didn't have the skills or because they didn't fit the description of who was wanted, but it was also for a way to keep them in, the factory roles and not really giving them the opportunity. Like, yes, you can interpret during our hiring process. You can train during our training season, but you're not going to level up to that next step.
So it's kind of like a systematic thing.
Yes, very systematic.
How did those experiences shape the way that you think about leadership today?
It has honestly told me that I need to be that voice for individuals who may not always get the opportunity to go speak at the table. A lot of times, even if the table is presented, when you've never been given access, you're not comfortable with saying, hey, we deserve XYZ. So for me, I think having that voice, an individual who's not afraid, to say, hey, this is not fair, this is not equal, this is not something that should be happening, gives me a different perspective from a lot of individuals who have been in a resilient mindset where they're pushing through, they're saying things will change one day. Well, let's make that one day today. Let's see what we can do right now rather than postponing and, waiting for tomorrow, because tomorrow may be worse. Tomorrow may not even come. So what can we do right now, and how can we, bring this to the attention of more people and not just within community? Because I think what's kept a lot of these disparities hidden or in the shadows is because they're not being spoken about. They're not being shed to light. They're not, being honestly told. So how do we tell these stories without shaming the individuals who have felt like they were silenced or they were told, wait another year for that role? So for me, it's just felt like, yes, it's great that, you've been resilient, you've been willing to wait, and you've been praying things will change. Well, let's bring that prayer to life. Let's do it now.
In this work, building trust is just foundational. Mm-hmm. So how have you been able to build that trust within the community?
So one thing that I do like to do is go within community to just ask those questions of what has your experience been like? Because that's one question that people often say, I've never been asked. A lot of families lose contact after 5 years because it is a federal policy that after 5 years you lose access to case management, and a lot of programs that community members are looking forward to continuing. So for them, it's just like after 5 years, I'm invisible. So for a lot of them, it is that one question where they're at least waiting for someone to ask, because it's just been so long to where they've been trying and trying and trying, and it's just feeling like I've been at the bottom for so long, where now I'm just hoping that my kids can get to a higher level. I want to know, where you are before I give you all these resources. And in my head, I'm thinking, hey, let's put your kid in a summer camp, but you're actually trying to tell me our lights are off, we don't have any food. And a lot of times that's what happens. They're not always asked, how do you feel right now mentally? Honestly, for me, it's just been knowing what the needs are before I'm saying these are the needs. For me, I think that's how I build trust going into the community, and just knowing what the community needs.
Yeah, so being heard kind of is building that trust.
Yes.
And then your foundation, More Than a Smile, it sounds like listens to those needs and then essentially addresses them. Am I understanding that correctly?
100%. All of our programs are community-led, so they are born from the experiences of the community. Without a need being initiated, a lot of our programs wouldn't exist, because they are the voices of our community who came and said, this is our area where we're struggling, or this is where we feel like we're not being heard.
And this is for all immigrant and refugee communities.
We welcome anyone and everyone. And I think this is what moved us from the typical office space to now doing it at local parks and expanding, rather than just saying you have to come to this office with 4 walls and this is the only place we will see you at.
Yeah. And actually something really cool I noticed, empowering women is a core focus of what your organization does. Why was it important to you that women and girls be centered in your programming?
Just being the oldest out of 17 kids, being the daughter, being the child who didn't have the same opportunities that my brothers did, and watching my mom be the mom, I always felt like, why is she always so stressed and resilient? And she's expected with all these social stuff. And, my dad just has one job and he's just dad. But my mom is like laundry, everything combined. And I noticed that in our community, women are often told, you're not supposed to be heard. Like, yes, it's great that you exist, but we really don't want you to make any noise. So for me, I grew up with a grandmother who has always told me, wrong is wrong. And if you feel like something is wrong and someone's, telling you to dim your light, make sure it's brighter. Make sure it's, making that statement of what they were telling you and it's opposite of what they want. So I've always used that as a way to say, hey, I know community has had a sense of women aren't to be seen or they aren't to be heard. However, I think that also showed within our communities. When we resettled, oftentimes women were not, seen as the breadwinner or seen as equal to their husbands. If there were meetings, if there were, things going on in the community, it was always the men coming together, the men being called on. Even if the woman shows up, it's always, where's your husband? Where's your brother? Where's the man in the household? We'll come to you when we feel like you're needed, but right now it's not about you. Mm-hmm. So, and growing up with that, I was like, I don't know. And I also have daughters, so it just made sense to where I didn't want my daughters to live in a society where they were limited because of their gender. And I also think just the experience that we had with community meeting that we did prior to us starting our community initiatives, because in the beginning, it was just the men. But then, I was like, so the meeting is for everybody. We are wanting you to speak up. And I noticed the women were all the way in the back. So I didn't know if they were even hearing anything or if they knew what was being talked about. And so I asked, hey, would you guys to share your experiences and share, what you think the community needs? And I remember one woman getting up and she was hesitant in the beginning, but once she got to the stage and she knew that people were listening, there was more confidence in her voice. She was talking about health disparity of her going to the health clinic. She got paperwork. She didn't know what the paperwork said. Communication gaps with the interpreter led to her waking up with her breast missing, and she was just devastated. Like, this happened to me, and I still don't have any answers as to what happened. So for a lot of the women, when she shared her story, their hands left their cheeks and they were like, this is something that is common and it's something that we need to talk about. So I think that brought to light that women have stories. They are a part of society, but they're also not being listened to. So for me, I just felt like that was a component that was missing. And this was the opportunity for them. Even if it meant we were only meeting once a month, it brought women into our society rather than just saying, yes, we do programming, but we're not really highlighting or focusing on the needs of women who I feel like have been ignored. And it's just created a network of women who are able to now come together. They have a WhatsApp group, and I think it's about 130 women.
Wow.
So that's just brought them to the lens of individuals who in the beginning we're just like, actually, you're just a mom. You're just a housewife. You don't really have much to incorporate into our society.
You did launch initiatives like your girls' sports cohort and the She Leads program, which I think you're referencing here. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through what those programs look like? And it sounds like what they're designed to create for girls and women are to be heard.
Yes.
But if there's anything beyond that, feel free to share.
Yes. Our community launched a soccer tournament in 2016. Since 2016, there has never been women playing. Although that they do catering, that, they're cheering on the sidelines. And to me, it just felt like, what's going on?
Do you mean in the immigrant community?
Yes.
Okay.
It's honestly just been like the men who are mostly, if any sport is named, they're going to tell you, bring your son and not your daughter. That's the typical setup for a lot of our community members. And for me, I was like, well, now I have daughters and they want to play. So we have to come with a solution. And with that, the idea of how can we get women onto the soccer field became a talking point. Honestly, I think they've never been asked, are you interested in sports? So for me, it was just like, it's
Creating space, it sounds like.
yes, the field I just felt like was empty if we didn't have both genders, playing. And there was some pushback, but I was expecting it. I felt like that would have motivated a lot more community members to speak up. But in the beginning, we did have girls who were looking over their shoulder because they're like, I don't want my mom to be called, and I don't want my dad to drive past and he's seeing me playing with boys. And, it was a community that was not used to seeing that. So I think after practices and just seeing, how the kids were not seeing the gender roles, they were seeing the soccer ball as a soccer ball. They weren't looking at it as, oh, my sister shouldn't be on the field. They were actually welcoming the idea of, oh, now I don't have to walk by myself. I can walk with my sister.
So it's co-ed, and it sounds like it's like seeing gender equality on the field, and that sort of translates into daily life.
Yes. The idea in the beginning was to keep it as just the girls' soccer team. But once we were able to navigate and show community that separation isn't always the ideal, like it's great, but if I can go to school with a boy, then why would I not be able to play a sport with them?
And then with the She Leads program, it sounds like that's a program, you said once a month, right? Mm-hmm. Where women can be heard.
Yes. And with that, it's intergenerational. So in the beginning, we did have women who had lived experience, who were women who felt like this is the first time that we have an actual women's group meeting in a space where we've never thought that it would be available. Now we have moved and transitioned to also incorporating how do we give you skills? How do we build your resume? How do we also make it known that you don't always have to be a housekeeper, that you don't always have to be a stay-at-home mom? You have skills. You are someone that can go out and contribute in a different way than the normal, go apply and be a housekeeper situation, where that's been the norm for a lot of community members.
Are you seeing women from different immigrant communities in Louisville building connections across cultures?
Yes. We had 9 different languages that were represented when we first launched our soccer program. And this was girls from 15 different high schools in Louisville. So this is how diverse our groups are. Oftentimes it is said like, oh, you're only working with the Somali Bantu community, but that's the community that raised me, and that's where I'm, mostly in. However, we're always welcoming anyone and everyone who wants to build a sense of community.
And then what structural barriers are immigrant and refugee women still facing in Louisville?
I think they've increased ever since. All of the things that are currently happening in the state that we're in, a lot of women have come and spoken about domestic violence and how, yes, it's great that I can leave, but I'm left with 8 kids and I only work a part-time job. I think it's best that I stay where I am. And if I do leave, there's no one else that's going to come and help or come save me. So not having the resources, I think, is number one that's kept them in those situations. But also, when you do go try and get services, it's also whether it's a language barrier. I remember one individual where I told her the specific women's center is, it's known to help women and situations that you're in. I think you should go there. She stayed probably 2 days because she just felt like, I'm not getting services. I don't speak the language. I don't feel like I belong because everyone just doesn't talk to me. They just assume I don't speak the language. And I just felt out of place. So I went back to my husband, and my house is the only house that I know. So if I go to my mom, she tells me, go back to your husband. So for a lot of women who are trying to get assistance or get help isn't always designed for them. It's not designed to assist them. So for a lot of them, it's just as if this is where I belong. And that breaks my heart because it's like, well, I thought it was supposed to help everybody. And that's why, I'm recommending and I'm giving and trying to navigate resources. So when we have situations like that and, they don't always follow up and say, I went back home. It's later in time where we're like now talking and doing programming and they're like, I'm actually back home. They're disappointed. I can see through their eyes that they tried, but it's just, I think that's one area right now where a lot of women are suffering and they are trying to push through, but pushing through isn't always an option that they're willing to take.
So I want to talk about that because for listeners who want to show up in meaningful ways, what does real support look like?
Honestly, showing up, just coming to one of our women's events. We need more people who are willing to say, I see you and I want to be in that space with you, because a lot of times it's great that we're gathering together, but it's even better when people see people who don't look like them in that space, people who are willing to say, I may not speak your language, I may not wear a headscarf, I may not know exactly where you are or what you're going through right now, but in any way that I can, I'm here. I see you, and this is one way for a lot of women, for us, specifically women who have never felt like they were seen, to be seen.
Your organization says a smile should never be a mask for struggle, but a symbol of strength, hope, and belonging. What does that belief mean to you personally?
It's just that smile. It's just something that we remember. However, we don't really know the story behind the smile. So for me, it's important that we're also recognizing, yes, it's great. You're always happy. It's great that you're smiling. But what's behind your smile? How can we learn and know who you are behind that smile? So for a lot of our community members, that's what I see. They're always smiling. They're always happy. And once I learn about what's behind their smile, I start to understand, all of these things that are hidden, all of the barriers, all of the resilience that they've, buried over the 20 years that they've been here. And I think it's important that, yes, it's great that we smile, but what have we been through and how are we acknowledging what's behind your smile and how can we help in any way with that?
Well, Amina, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me today.
Thank you.
On Track is produced by Louisville Public Media. Our production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Laura Ellis, and me, Ayisha Jaffer, with support from Rebecca Feldhouse-Adams and Alex Biscardi. Our music is by Kojin Toshiro. Find more at LouisvilleOnTrack.org, and remember, being kind is free. That's the start of community. Thanks for listening.
Few things are as uplifting as the greatest moments in sports. And nothing brings us together quite like Team USA at the Olympic Winter Games. From NBC Universal's iconic storytelling to the innovative technology across Xfinity and Peacock, Comcast brings the Olympic Games home to America, sharing every moment with millions. When Team USA steps onto the world stage, we're not just watching, we're cheering together. This winter, we're all on the same team. Comcast, proud partner of Team USA.
At Nature's Bounty, the belief is simple. You already have a brilliant body. Supplements just help support your journey. For over 50 years, Nature's Bounty has offered vitamins and supplements to help you eat, sleep, thrive, repeat. From magnesium glycinate for heart and muscle support to hair growth capsules for fuller, thicker hair. And probiotics with 20 billion live cultures for digestion. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature to thrive. Learn more at naturesbounty.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.